What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Thursday, March 31st. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 5-game slate here tonight. And we got a ton of good plays on the slate tonight. So let's get into this. At the point guard position, here's a stud pick. I like James Harden from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Detroit Pistons, who have the 9th worst defense overall, give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. James Harden has averaged 51.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 37 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He's projected at 51.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $10,200 DraftKings salary, same price on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game, and James Harden has scored 55, 38, and 66 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 37, 39, and 34 minutes. And he scored 47, 51, 78, and 63 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Pistons. So I like James Harden here versus the Detroit Pistons. Okay, now here's another point guard, shooting guard player that I like, but he is on a back-to-back, so just careful with that. But they have not raised his salary, and he's got a great FanDuel salary. I think he still has a lot of upside if he doesn't get screwed on minutes. So I like Caris LeVert from the Cleveland Cavaliers playing the Atlanta Hawks, who have the 11th worst defense overall. They give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Caris LeVert has averaged 30.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 27% usage rate. He's projected at 30.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's $5,800 DraftKings salary and $600 less on FanDuel. So I love that FanDuel price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game, and Caris LeVert has scored 46, 29, and 29 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 38, 32, and 36 minutes. So it's a little concerning that he played 38 minutes last game, but his FanDuel price is low enough where he could get it done in limited minutes. So I like Caris LeVert, especially on FanDuel, here versus the Atlanta Hawks. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Malik Monk from the LA Lakers playing the Utah Jazz, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing shooting guards. Malik Monk has averaged 24.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. I think he can score 30 fantasy points or more here tonight, get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,500 DraftKings salary, $300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 225.5 points scored in this game. And Malik Monk has been on fire, scoring 43, 32, and 33 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 28, and 31 minutes. So I like Malik Monk here versus the Utah Jazz. Now another shooting guard that I like, he's also on a back-to-back, but he's been on fire. I like Kevin Huerter from the Atlanta Hawks, playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing shooting guards, but Kevin Huerter, he's averaged 22.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. But I think he can score 30 fantasy points or more here tonight, get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,400 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. And Kevin Huerter, he's been on fire, scoring 31, 36, and 35 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 33, and 37 minutes. So I like Kevin Huerter here versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Zach LaVine from the Chicago Bulls, playing the LA Clippers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing small forwards. Zach LaVine has averaged 39.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He's projected at 40.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $8,000 DraftKings salary, $600 less on FanDuel, so I love that FanDuel price. And Zach LaVine has scored 20, 38, and 33 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 34, 36, and 38 minutes. So I think he's due for a big game, and I like this pick because he scored 43, 47, 67, 44, and 50 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Clippers. So you're buying Zach LaVine low, and he's just been on fire versus the Clippers. So I like Zach LaVine here versus the LA Clippers.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on.
Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. So another stud pick for you here. You got a great game here with the Milwaukee Bucks playing the Brooklyn Nets. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 239.5 points scored in this game. So, of course, there's a couple of monster studs from this game. You got Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks, and you got Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets. Out of those 2 guys, I mean, it's a coin flip. Go either way. But I like Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Kevin Durant has averaged 51.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 37 minutes per game with a 32% usage rate. He's projected at 52.3 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score close to 60 fantasy points. 60 fantasy points or more even in this one. Get you 5 times value or more. He's $11,400 DraftKings salary, $500 less on FanDuel. And Kevin Durant has scored 73, 52, and 40 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 39, 41, in 30 minutes. And I like this pick because he's got a good track record here versus the Bucks. Scored 54, 58, 73, and 49 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Bucks. So I like Kevin Durant here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. And real quick, let's take a look at what Giannis has done in his last 5 games versus the Brooklyn Nets. He put up 58, 52, 66, 67, and 56 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Nets. And he is only 400 more on DraftKings, although it looks like Kevin Durant has a much lower salary on FanDuel. So maybe Giannis on DraftKings, Kevin Durant on FanDuel, but either of those guys are great studs here tonight. Okay, another power forward that I like is Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers, playing the Detroit Pistons, who have the 9th worst defense overall, give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Tobias Harris has averaged 33.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He's projected at 33.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's 6,700 DraftKings salary, 200 less on FanDuel, and Tobias Harris has scored 53, 31, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 38, and 24 minutes. And he scored 30, 32, and 38 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Pistons. And he hasn't scored under 31 fantasy points in 4 out of his last 5 games, with the exception of that 21 when he played limited minutes. So I like Tobias Harris here versus the Detroit Pistons. Okay, now here's a value play. You're going to have to find some of these value plays if you want to fit in a guy like Giannis or Durant. So take a look at Nicholas Batum from the LA Clippers, playing the Chicago Bulls, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Nicholas Batum has averaged 20 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 25 minutes per game with a 14% usage rate. He's projected at 18.7 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.1 times value. He's only 3,700 DraftKings salary, 200 more on FanDuel. He scored 19, 16, and 21 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 22, 22, and 18 minutes. So his minutes per game are down a little bit from his season average, but I think he can score 20 fantasy points or more here and get you over 5 times value. So I like Nicholas Batum as a value play here versus the Chicago Bulls. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Nikolai Vucevic from the Chicago Bulls, playing the LA Clippers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Nikolai Vucevic has averaged 41.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 25% usage rate. He's projected at 41.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's 8,100 DraftKings salary, 400 less on FanDuel, and he scored 42, 40, and 37 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 33, and 35 minutes. So I like Nikolai Vucevic here versus the LA Clippers. Now I also like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz, playing the LA Lakers, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, middle of the pack defending opposing centers. Rudy Gobert has averaged 41.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He's projected at 42.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.5 times value. He's $7,700 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. And Rudy Gobert has scored 39 and 39 fantasy points in his last 2 games, playing 38 and 37 minutes. So I like Rudy Gobert here versus the LA Lakers. Now, another center that I like, this is more of a DraftKings play. I like Andre Drummond from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing centers, but Andre Drummond has averaged 25.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 19 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate, but he's projected at 29.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $6,000 DraftKings salary, but he is $1,000 more on FanDuel, so probably a DraftKings play for me. Now, Vegas thinks there's going to be 239.5 points scored in this game, so a great game to stack. This is going to be a great game to watch. Andre Drummond has scored 35, 53, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 31, and 17 minutes. So I like to see that he played 28 and 31 minutes the last 2 games. If he can get 28 to 31 minutes in this game, should be able to crush value. He's a point per minute monster, averaging 1.34 fantasy points per minute. So I like Andre Drummond here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Oh, real quick before you get out of here, if you want daily sports betting and player prop picks, we put a link to today's video with our NBA picks in the bottom of the description of this video. It's our new YouTube channel, so we would really appreciate it if you dropped a like on that video and subscribe to that new channel so it can help us get shown in the YouTube algorithm and you won't miss those daily NBA picks.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.